is Thursday. Happy Thursday. If you're watching live, if you're watching the replay, whatever day you're watching on, welcome. I'm Elle Ingalls. I'm the creator of the Pressure Free Method. If you haven't encountered that before, you can go to my site, elleingles.com. If you'd like to have a conversation with me, just click that little book a call button and that will take you there. So, what are we talking about today? Gap and the Gain. A book by Dan Kennedy and Dr. Benjamin Hardy a while back was titled The Gap and the Gain. And I really loved the premise of the book. So I wanted to share that today because if you're a client of mine or you've worked with me, we've probably had a talk around this, that I think it's really important to celebrate incremental gains, the little tiny wins. And oftentimes we've been acculturated to measure where we are to where we want to be. So this is coming out of that book, Gap in the Gain. That's the gap. So if we're here, we started here, we're here with any kind of project or work or knowledge, education, and this is where we want to end up, or this is what we think is our end goal. We're oftentimes measuring the space between where we are and where we want to be. And it can seem daunting. Like, how are we going to get there? How come we're not there yet? All these questions that are going to take you into a negative trajectory can go through your head when you're in that gap or measuring that gap. And very infrequently do we measure, okay, we started here and here is where we are now. If we can start to measure that, like look at that and see how far we've come, it's really so cool to like build the energy of that, build the energy of celebrating how far we've come versus how far we have to go, which can be, again, just a downer. Like, I thought I'd be so much further along, and here I am, right? So, how far we've come, that's the gain. Where we have left, that's the gap. When it comes to pressure-free living, and if you're starting out with me, if you've just begun, or if you've been my client, if you've never been my client, um, and you're just taking these little tips here, I just truly want you to celebrate every time you notice a trigger and you push the Ferris wheel, shoot a shot, swim, relax your abs, smile. Like any of the little tips that I'm sharing in here, there's so many other tools that are a little more, I guess, sophisticated is a word you might use, or just a little more dense with content. Double yellow line is one I share on here. Simple little ways to interrupt that stress response. It's got to be simple for the most part because we're so complex. But the stress response is a very simple thing. And knowing that you have a window of time, up to 10 seconds, depending on what your heart rate is at the beginning of noticing the trigger. So if your heart rate is at a resting heart rate, it's about a 10-second window. If you're more elevated, it's going to be tinier. Like I once was working with a hockey player who said, "Oh, I only have 0.6 seconds, and then I want to fight." So it seems like the window was very small. 0.6 seconds, by the way, is enough time to score a goal. I have, from a face-off, I have seen it happen. Okay. So 0.6 seconds is plenty of time to pop a smile. It's plenty of time to relax our abs, get up and over the problem, lift our posture. Like there's so much you can do in a millisecond that would tell your brain there's no reason to go into fight or flight here. But because we have so many habits of reaction that have built in since before we were even born, and we imitate. So sometimes people will ask me, is anxiety, is it depression, anxiety, is this genetic? Is it inherited? I'm going to take a stab because I don't know that I haven't seen any research that actually knows if there's a genetic component. But more importantly, there's a nurturing component. So if you were raised by someone who had a lot of depression and anxiety, you were imitating. You were imitating their face. So if you had a parent who was very depressed you come out into the world, you're not seeing a lot of smiling. If you're in a daycare situation where there's in Michigan, the rule is there's one daycare worker for 5 infants. How often is one of those babies actually seeing a human smile? I don't know. You'd have to be a really amazing human to give 5 babies that much beautiful attention as you're trying to change them, feed them like 5 at a time. So smiling is a huge thing. And if you're not getting that smiling when you're small, then you can see it in your mouth. You can see that there's more of a downturned mouth. There's a sadness. You were picking all of that up and you were thinking that's normal. When we come into the world, the only thing that we know is normal is how we're raised. I was working with a person who told me how it wasn't until college where they actually went to somebody's house and said, "Oh, so this is how a family acts?" Like we don't know how other families act if we don't explore and go to friends' houses and see how other people are, right? We don't know. We only know what we're born into, just like the lobster in the pot. Like we only know that. So we're imitating. And then you go to school and you're imitating that. And today, educators are experiencing so much stress and distress. They have their personal lives, which could be full of stress, and then they have so much being piled on them today, so different than 20 years ago. It's amazing. I've worked with educators and I've seen what's going on, and they have what's happening in the classroom, the disrespect and the like, it's incredible. And so now those students are imitating their teachers, especially early elementary, going through the elementary years. You're 7 hours a day with this person, and maybe you're going from there to a daycare situation. So we're imitating, and those habits of reactions get really ground into us. So if you had someone that had an instant knee-jerk reaction to something spilling in the kitchen, then you probably jump a little bit when you spill something in the kitchen. Does that make sense? Like we're imitating. So when we're working on pressure free and we're trying to break some of those habits of reaction, we're literally breaking habits of reactions that are hundreds of years old in some cases. And then all the reactions we've built in our own lifetime. So however years old you are, you've been building those reactions. And just like a vinyl recording, you've got grooves, you've got neural pathways that are so grooved in. So, what we're doing with pressure free is interrupting those. We're interrupting the habit of reaction to react when something spills in the kitchen, to react to a loud noise, to react when you hear a certain tone of voice. So, all of those little reactions are the things that we're taking a look at. And of course, we got to notice them first, right? So even if you just notice it, that is a celebration. I remember a few years ago when I realized that visual clutter was a trigger for me. If there's too much clutter on my desk space, too much clutter where I keep all my books that I'm reading, I'm usually reading a few books at a time. And it's like, if there's too much clutter there, that's an issue for me. Right now, that space is cluttered in my house. I have this old chest from Weir's Beach, New Hampshire. That was one of the chests when people would come up from the cities, from Boston, New York, take the train up. They brought things in a big chest. I have one of those. And inside are all the games that we play. And then on top, I have my reading material. It's by our sofa. I'm like, that is a mess right now. And here's how I know. Every time I walk through the room, my eyes go there. I notice it. So what are you noticing? Another thing you could do, and this is kind of a great time to do it, if you're home, if you're taking time off over the long weekend, and you're not going anywhere, this is a really fun, I call it fun little exercise. And it's noticing what you've been tolerating that pings on you and possibly triggers your stress response. So for example, when we moved into this condo, I needed to replace these windows here. And so I booked it, I got it all set. And when I had them come, they nicked a little bit of this white paint here, and so underneath here it's dark. And for I don't know, 2, 3 years, I didn't paint it. Every day I saw it, it annoyed me. That's just an example of a constant little annoyance, something catching your eye. It's like, oh, I need to fix that, or I need to get rid of that, or I need to get a new light bulb. Like these little tiny things that are taking up our brain space. So I was coaching this on one of my annual retreats in the at the start of the new year. It's like, look at what you're tolerating. And after it, I just went up to the storage room here, got the paint, because all the paints for this whole thing, condo are here, came down, fixed this. And I can't tell you that. Like every morning I wake up and I look out this window at my sweet little pine branch, and I'm like, I'm so happy that this was fixed, that I fixed this. So, so look for things you're tolerating. Do you have a leaky faucet? Do you have what are these little things that just kind of drive you crazy, annoy you? Because annoyance builds up and triggers our stress response. So that's just a little thing you can do that removes some of these triggers that are working on you and taking up your brain space. A lot of us complain we don't have enough time. What's taking up the time? Noticing that is a huge deal. So celebrate every little thing you fix and you change and you notice. And then over time, when you start to, because you've noticed this thing, you'll begin to interrupt the stress response before you release those floods of hormones. It takes a little bit of time, especially if you have some big triggers, like you're frequently late, and every time you're late, you're frenzied. You've triggered the stress response if you're in that state. If you ever use the word busy to describe yourself, you've triggered the stress response. Because pretty much when you aren't in that adrenalized energy, you don't feel busy, you feel productive. There's a very big difference from feeling busy and frenetic to feeling productive and efficient. Um, you're doing a ton, but you're doing it very elegantly. You're not in that frenzied state. That frenzied state is fight or flight. I used to wear that busy badge, like, look at me go. But it was frenetic energy. And then you end up crashing at the end of the day and you don't have energy. So now you don't have energy to have fun. You may be taking this weekend off, but you're exhausted from your work. So you can't engage in all the fun that you'd like to engage in. People ask me on podcasts, sometimes they ask me, what do you do for self-care? Pressure free is ultimate self-care because it's all the time not interrupting or interrupting the stress response. It's keeping yourself clean all the time. So then you don't necessarily need self-care because you've been exhausted and stressed. I can do a yoga thing because I want to, because it feels good. I could go out to the beach and just sit on a dune and think for a while because I want to, not because I'm stressed. And so the thoughts you have are very different when you're clean on the inside from all these hormones. So Gap in the Gain, let's go back to that to finish out here. Great book, Dan Kennedy, Dr. Benjamin Hardy. The premise is, are you falling into the gap with your thoughts? Are you thinking about here you are and here's where you need to be, and it feels so daunting, and so you're beating yourself up for not making the progress you think you should be? Or are you measuring the gain? Are you noticing, look, I achieved this and I did this? It could be even as small as what I mentioned in this, like I painted this after the workers had little nicks from replacing my windows. I painted it, and it just got rid of this thing I was tolerating for a long time that was working on me and just causing me some annoyance, because visual clutter is one of my triggers. So with pressure free, you're noticing. And I want you to celebrate that noticing. That noticing is a gain. That noticing is like, oh yeah, when I hear that person's tone of voice, it is actually a trigger for me. I trigger the stress response. Okay, so I don't need to do that. I get to interrupt and not release those stress hormones every time I hear that particular voice. And that keeps me free. So you'll play, you'll practice until finally you hear the voice and it doesn't even affect you. And sometimes it doesn't take very long at all, to be honest, because the tips that I give you are based on neuroscience, like these big motions, the celebration Ferris wheel, swimming, flip the switch, using your body in an unusual motion opens new neural pathways very quickly. It's one of the only ways an adult brain can do that. So when you use a big motion along with that noticing, you stand a really great chance of breaking a habit that you may have had for decades. So, gap in the gain, celebrate every little gain, celebrate everything you notice that could be a possible trigger. That's going to set you free. That's going to set you pressure free. I wish you a beautiful, pressure free day. Bye.